Well, I'm painting Duncansby Stacks scene today, and the first thing that I'm doing is wetting the canvas. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up the dark grey colour that I'm going to use for the base colour for the clouds, for the sky, sorry. So I'm mixing ultramarine blue and burnt umber together, and then I'm going to add some white to that. I'm going to pop that base colour down there. It's actually a little bit darker than I wanted it to be, so but I've got a lot of mixing time because the canvas is really wet, so I'll just sort that out in a second. I've just loaded my brush with pure white paint and I'm going to go over that. I'm starting from the top and working my way down because the clouds are quite heavy towards the bottom, so lighter at the top. So I've loaded my brush with just pure white paint again. It's a little angle brush and I'm going to start introducing some clouds. So as we work our way down the sky, these clouds become less fluffy and a bit more linear. When this dries, I'll add some more white and really pull out that light. But obviously for now it's kind of blending into the wet canvas and mixing with the darker colours. So I'll leave that there, I think. I'll wait for that to dry and I'll go and have my breakfast. So the first coat of the sky is dry now, and I'm just going over it and pulling out some more bright, fluffy clouds. It's just about capturing a bit more light now that the paint underneath is dry. And I'm using a dry brush as well, whereas before my brush was wet for mixing. It's really dry now to scumble in some of these fluffier clouds. Again, I'm only using 3 colours for this painting, really, to begin with anyway. I'm only using blue, brown and white, ultramarine blue, burnt umber and titanium white to be exact. So I'm mixing up the darkest colour I've got here, which is the blue and the brown together. I mean, you'll hear that in every single video I make. Instead of using black, I'll use this mixture instead. So I'm going to use that for the shadows on these stacks. I tried to video me drawing it there and I don't know how well that's come out because I can't hold this gimbal and draw. I can paint, but I just can't. I can't draw. I'm a better painter than I am a drawer. Anyway, let's get some of these shadows in. I'm actually not enjoying this brush. I thought I'd give it a go, it's a new one, but I'm not enjoying it, so I'm going to switch. See how I got on with this one. It's just a smaller angle brush that's seen better days. That was a new brush I was using, but I prefer the brushes that have been worn in a bit. I mean, how terrible does it look at this stage? It's, even though I've been doing this for a long time, there's still that voice in my head that's like, you can't do this. Duncansby Stacks, paint them. No, you can't do that. And then it's the rest of the day trying to silence that voice and prove it wrong, but I sometimes manage, not always. In fact, more recently I absolutely haven't managed. I think that's what keeps it kind of interesting, that you think you know what you're doing, but you don't. I just feel sometimes it's an absolute hit or a miss. It's not something like you're ever going to have a real handle on. I think rocks are one of my biggest challenges. I can't seem to, it's just all about scribbling until I get something I want. I'm really kind of uncertain of them still, and it's actually the reason why I've put this painting off for so long. I've had this photo in my library for over a year at least, but because the stacks are just cliffs, there's not really too much happening in the sea that I could focus on. It's all about getting the rocks right, so I've kind of put that off because it's not my preferred subject. But I did that painting yesterday or the day before, I can't remember, of Cadmium Bay, the last video I've just put up, and there was some rocks and cliffs in the background of that, and I was super chuffed with them. I don't think I've ever painted rocks that good in my life, and that was pure accidental, just trial and error. And I think that's given me a kind of false sense of confidence of getting these guys right. But yeah, hopefully you're up for seeing a painting that hasn't worked as much as one that has. Some days I quite like the challenge though, and today's obviously that day because I'm giving it a go, but there's other days where I actually can't stomach the challenge, and it's only when you feel like you've been challenged so much for so long, and the Christmas commissions this year really challenged me. Oh, I think I say every year that I'm happy to see the back of them, but I really mean it this year. I was sitting there saying I had to fail a couple, which is not like me. I don't usually do that. I don't like to do that. I only do it when I know that I'm not going to get something that's good enough, and I couldn't physically bear to give someone a painting that just wasn't good enough. But I actually come up in my memories from Facebook last year that I'd failed a couple then too. I just actually don't remember, so I'm giving myself a rough deal for something apparently that I make a habit of. But still, it feels kind of shite. Oh, promised myself I would need to swear in this tutorial. So we're going to mix up a kind of light grey. I was torn there whether to go light grey or dark grey. But something similar to what we put as the base colour for that sky is what we're looking for. And then we're going to reflect that in the sea. I think we'll go with that. Bit of blue, brown, white. That's the only colours I'm using. Again, the only time I'll add something else is when I add the yellow in to make some green for the tops of the cliffs. But I think that's do it. Here's what we're making here. That's the photo I'm working from. It was one of John's. Oh, just when I see the photo through that, it's like, I'm never going to do that justice, am I? Shite myself now. I just said I wasn't going to swear and then I bloody... Oops, I did it again. Oh, God. That's why I try not to speak in these videos, because I end up getting a bit too comfortable and then I swear. And I'm always worried because it takes so long to edit that I can't find the bit where I swore. At least now I know I've absolutely documented it. So it was when I started painting the sea, so I can take that out. And then again, I'll need to take all this out now, because now you'll be wondering what I'm talking about if I take out the swear words. I might just leave them in. So yeah, just base colour. I don't know whether to bore you with all this. This is just what I'm doing. Just the base colour for the sea. That's going all the way down here and up, and it's just a solid colour. So I'm not going to bore you with that. You know where I'm going. So that's where we are now. I've added all that dark grey as the base colour for that sea there. And I'm just going to add some white to that now. So add a little bit of the white to the mixture that's already on the palette. Anyway, that look good yet? Oh, I don't know. I'm mixing up a light blue mixture here, so just a touch of ultramarine blue, lots of white, and I'm using a smaller brush. And I'm going to pick out even more details in this water here, really lighten up some of it. Don't want to overdo it. Just pick out where it hits the edges of these rocks that I haven't fully put in yet. A lot of guesswork. Guesswork. I talk absolutely rubbish. It's right there. It's right there, so I'm no guessing nothing. What am I like? Literally following the exact instructions and I'm talking about guesswork. Had a tutor that once told me that it was all just about mark making. I really couldn't understand what he meant about using all these different brushes to make different marks, and because you can get into the habit of just using the same brush all the time, and then you don't really find out what your other brushes are capable of. There's brushes out there that will give you the perfect wave and perfect blade of grass and cloud and things like that. I know, but where's the brush that gives me the perfect? Where's the brush that gives me the perfect rocks? Haven't found that guy yet. Where's he? I'm using a brush with a good wee point on it just now to try and get the edges of these stacks just as accurate as possible. The plan is actually to put a wash over these stacks before I start putting in the detail, like the light and the shade on the rocks. And I don't want to lose the shape of the stacks. It's like everybody knows what these stacks look like, so I don't want to get them wrong. I say that, and that's just too much of a point on that one. Let's round that off there. And this last wee guy. I think they'd be absolutely spectacular to see it at sunset. I've not been that lucky yet. I can't even remember how many times I've been to see them. I think it's only been about 3. But we've had really miserable weather. In fact, this was the best day that we had because it was really, the clouds were so dramatic, but I think they'd be absolutely spectacular to see with a bit of colour in the sky. Anyway, I think that would do. Yeah, I'll let that dry and then we'll shove a wash on them. So lots of water with my brush. I'm going to create a little pool of water on that palette and add the dark mixture to that. Nice watery dark grey. And I'm going to just absolutely slaughter those stacks with that. And that'll give me a nice ground to start picking out some areas of light on those rocks now. So I'm mixing up a colour for the cliffs in the background, just behind the stacks. I'm trying to get the right grey for this, so it's a case of playing around with my blue, my brown and my white again. That looks like a nice shade. Let's try that on the canvas and see what that looks like. So obviously I put the wash over as well. I don't think I've showed you that finished. It's amazing how much better they look already with just that wash on them. Anyway, let's see what this colour's up to. Let's see if we like this. Let's see. I think it needs a bit more white. Let's try a little bit more white to that mixture. Oh, that's looking a bit better. Okay, so I'm just going to pop this as a solid colour in just now. So I don't know whether that's going to be too exciting to watch, so I'll show you that for about 30 seconds and then I'll just go ahead and finish it. Look at me trying to cut corners so that I don't need to edit this entire video. Honestly, editing videos does my nut in. So this is the first time that I'm going to introduce a new colour. I'm going to bring yellow to the party. I'm going to mix that with some blue and some brown. Let's see how we feel about that. Right, a bit more yellow and some white. Wonder if that looks okay. Let's try that. So I'm going to create a break between these cliffs in the background and the sky, because the colour between the lightest parts of the cliffs and the darkest part of the sky is actually quite close, so I don't want them merging together. So I'm going to have to fix that, but it's easier if we have this little boundary. Oh, put that there. Does this guy have some? He has a tiny bit as well. There's actually quite a lot of green. Should I just pop that in? Just pop wee bits in while we've got this colour mixed up. Might as well. So I'm mixing up a slightly darker grey than the base colour that I put down for the distant cliffs. Again, they need a bit more separation from the sky, so it's hard to get that mid-tone right, because I can't have them as dark as the stacks and I can't have them as light as the sky, so there's an area in between I'm trying to get. Let's see what that looks like. It might be a case of masking off the background cliffs. Masking off the stacks even, and then putting a wash over these background cliffs, but I don't really want to do that, because then what I should have done was I should have just put the backdrop in first and painted the stacks over it, but that's what I get. That's what I get for not playing with the rules, innit? Background to foreground and all that. So if this painting works, it's actually going to be a miracle, isn't it? Taking the rules, throwing them about, do what you want with them. That's all fair and well as long as it works out. Oh, that looks alright. That looks alright. I might get away with it. Working background to foreground, that's for conformists, isn't it? People that play with the rules. I don't play with the rules, I live on the edge. That doesn't sound like me at all. It sounds like who I'd like to be in my head, but the reality is much different. I'm going to start taking care of some light on the stacks now. So again, same colours, burnt umber, ultramarine blue and white. I don't want to capture the lightest light yet though. I want to go a kind of mid-tone. I feel that's still a bit too light. Let's see what we've got. Nice linear marks here. And mix them up with some little dots and dashes. I'm actually not comfortable with this section down here. I think it needs a lot more shadow before I can start building up lights. So right along the edge is like an almost bright white light, so I'm not going to touch that yet. Really moving and twisting my brush and trying to get the most of the marks that it can make. So I'm just about to move on to one of the other stacks there, but I'm just going to pull out a little bit of light on the edge of this one here. So I'm taking a big dot of white there and adding that to the grey mixture, and that's going to be my lightest section. Now I'm actually going to change brushes though, because I'm using a small angle brush, but I want to go even smaller than that. So I'm going to go this guy here. So I'm adding some light on the top of these rocks at the bottom of the stacks where they meet the sea now. Again, just playing around with the shape, so little dots and lines, little scumbles. You don't want to keep making the same mark over and over next to each other. Just starts to look a bit kind of unnatural. You want to try and create a nice little variety of marks, and you still want to leave a great deal of dark space. I'm not really following the photo at this stage too much because, well, it would drive you bonkers to try and get it absolutely spot on, so I'm really just kind of making it up now. So the light's not too dramatic on the edges of these two stacks, so there's just the point that I'm working on just now is quite bright. Wait a minute, that doesn't look right to me. That looks like it should be. I think I've got the shape of that slightly out, so I'm just going to fix that a little bit. It looks like it's a little bit thicker there than I have it. I'm working with a dry brush so that it's not like absolute straight lines that I'm getting. It's a bit of a scumble to them. Really got to push into the canvas to get some paint off of that brush. So there's even less on this stack. The white that you're seeing there is just blank canvas still rather than a colour that's mixed. So I'm going to go sort that out and I'll be back with that finished in a second. So I'm mixing up a slightly darker grey. I've just actually added some of that blue and brown mix to the white that I was using there for the light. And I'm going to try and fill in the edges of the stacks where the shadow's just not too harsh. Like right here. So again, it's about trying to get a mix that stands apart from that background, which, I don't know if that does that too well. It might. Let's stick with it just now. Let's not give up straight away with this colour. I'm just wondering whether it could benefit from being just slightly darker than that. Let's have a wee look and see if we add just a little bit more of that colour to that mix. I think. Oh no, that is good. It's strange. It actually looks better. Just when I looked at the camera there, it looks better on the camera than it does in real life, and that never happens. That actually looks not too bad. Right, we'll go with that then. Right, so I'm just going to fix this stack over here, it's the same colour I'm using, so it's not the darkest dark, but it's not far away from that, it's like one shade away. So you would get that by mixing your burnt umber, your ultramarine blue, and then adding the tiniest little touch of white just to change the colour and no more. So I'm just going to take some pure white and I'm just going to pick out the waves in the sea at the bottom of these rocks. And I'm using the edge of my brush to try and pick up the thickness of that paint so that the kind of three-dimensionality of that paint. Is three-dimensionality a word? I don't know actually, but it seemed fitting there. But we'll see if that helps give these waves a bit of life without actually having to do kind of tonal changes and mixing of colours and things. And I want it loaded with paint. I want these waves to really kind of bounce off of the canvas. Why is that, Vicky? Is it because you want to take people's eye off the stacks? No. No, of course it's no. Got nothing to do with that. It's just because I like the sea. So it's slightly different marks now. A little bit more linear when it comes to the foreground. Again, I'm not 100% sure on how much you want to see of this because it's basically the same mark, the same colour, and the same brush over and over again. Now I'm just using it for where these rocks meet the sea. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I think you can kind of see what I've got going on here. It's just dots and dashes and lines, and you know, it doesn't matter if you don't do it exactly the way that I'm doing it. You'll get a different painting depending on the marks and the brushes you use, but it doesn't mean it's a bad painting. In fact, it probably means it'll be better. Doesn't take much to be better than this. So yeah, I'm going to go fill in the rest of that, but you get the point, don't you? I'm mixing up the darkest dark colour again. So ultramarine blue and burnt umber, and I'm going to bring some shadows back to those stacks. Trying to make really little marks at this stage now, give the impression of detail without actually having to do any detail. So I'm going to do the same with this stack here. I'm going to start picking out kind of lines as if it's like gaps and little crevices within each rock, and then picking out where the shadows might be on the more kind of boulder shaped rocks and things like that. And then I'm going to go into this little bit that's kind of popping out, appearing out of the sea here, and I'm going to pull some shadows into that. Again, just dots and dashes, similar to what we did over here with this section. So I'm going to do that. And I'll come back to you when we put the shadows into this big rock here at the front. So I hope you don't mind bearing with me here. I might speed this up so that you don't need to watch it. Right, it's getting to the stage where I'm in great danger of overworking it now. So I'm going to call it pretty soon. The last thing that I'm doing is just bringing a bit more definition to those hills in the background. I'm going to mix some ultramarine blue, some more of that yellow, some burnt umber, and a touch of white. Maybe a bit more yellow. That looks ideal. let's leave it there. I'm in two minds whether to keep going, but I constantly talk about being a bit looser, and it's already not that. I've already went too far for it to be considered loose, so right, I'm gonna stop it there. That'll do.